He was about two months old when we really suspected a lot of problems. He had a bilateral or engorged hernia that he was born with, and so he screamed from birth from that. But then he also threw up. I was nursing, and he threw up my milk about 30 minutes after he ate, every single time he ate. So he ate about every 2 hours, 24 hours a day, round the clock, and it was very difficult because I had a 19-month-old too. And he had a real raspy breathing. You could hear when you hold him up next to you. And I took him to the pediatrician, and at that young of an age, they're not really concerned about it generally. They just say, oh, he's got congestion, but he didn't have congestion. He didn't have any runny nose. He didn't have any of that. He just had this clicking noise in his chest. And finally, I, had to push the subject, but we found out that it was cystic fibrosis, which cystic fibrosis really doesn't run in my family, but emphysema and a lot of lung conditions do. And so it wasn't really all that surprising to me. And then he had the digestive problem that goes along with cystic fibrosis, and he could not handle mother's milk, but he kept down goat's milk. But it had to be raw, and it had to be fresh, and it had to be, the good stuff. But I got into herbs right after he was born because of my help, and then I started working on him, and I started giving him extracts, and liquid herbs are fantastic for children because, of course, they can't swallow capsules, and if you aren't nursing anymore, then you can't get it into them. And of course, if they're not eating food, and at a couple of months old, they're not eating regular food either, so it's very difficult. I put 5 different extracts in the bottle. One was LB extract, which has the lower bowel cleansers like cascara and buckthorn and things like that. And I put 1 drop of capsicum so that it would assimilate into his body because he needed that. And I put a lot of lobelia extract, which you have to be cautious with lobelia, but when you have a child that has a tremendous amount of tension, it needs to relax, and the lungs have a lot of congestion, lobelia is just fantastic. And I put black walnut extract in there and padiarco. It was a gradual thing of getting better. He never really was sick other than that, but it was like when he was 9 months old, all of a sudden he started running a fever of 104. And instead of using Tylenol to push it back into the tissues, I chose to give an enema to reduce the fever. And when I did, no stool came out. It was only these little white, small little white mucus-like looking things with black legs. And he eliminated over 200 in a 2-day period of time. I would give him an enema. These things would come out like 20 or 30 at one time. I'd scoop batches of them up to save them. And then the fever would go down, then the fever would come back up a couple hours later, then I'd do the enema again, and these things would come out, and that kind of process for 2 days. And then finally, it stopped happening. And he had eliminated all these substances, but at that point, there was a noticeable difference in the child. And that's what we call like a healing crisis. And it was over with. He didn't, the hard part was to get it analyzed so I could have a sheet of paper that said what these substances were. Because you take it to your pediatrician like I first did, and he laughs at you and tells you to flush it down the toilet. You call the health department, and they think it's very interesting, but they can't help you. And I finally called an upline in Chicago and told me to get in touch with a biochemist. And I did that, and he did all the work for free, and he was willing to analyze them. And he sent them off to 5 different doctors all over the United States, and they all come back saying that these are the substances found in the lungs of a child that has cystic fibrosis. But how you got them out of the lungs, we don't know, because I didn't tell him all the things that I did. But he's fine, and he's 7.